The stars were quiet that day, and space looked peaceful. But deep in the dark, something ancient was watching, waiting, and remembering. Commander Elias Voss leaned forward in his chair, eyes fixed on the black emptiness outside the ships. Main window, his crew, just for humans and one AI unit, were finishing a salvage mission in an uncharted system near the edge of known space. A broken ship had been drifting for years, maybe centuries, filled with old cargo and strange tech no one could recognize. To them, it was just another forgotten relic in space. Another day of work, another paycheck. Elias yawned and checked his wristpad. "All right, team," he said through the compact. "Up what you can. Leave the junk behind. We're heading back in 15. Juno, the ship's engineer, was floating inside the old vessel's remains, pulling a glowing crystal from a twisted steel frame. "This thing looks valuable," she said. "Maybe alien tech." Elias didn't care. Salvage rules said, take what's useful, sell it, and move on. Juno pulled the crystal loose, and the second she did, something small blinked nearby, an orb, about the size of a melon, with tiny lights around its shell. Some kind of recording device, she asked, but before anyone could answer, the orb flared red and exploded silently in the vacuum of space. The shockwave was small, but enough to push debris into their ship's hull. The crew felt the tremor and went into alert mode. Elias ordered a scan, but nothing came up on sensors. "Just dead metal and echoes. False alarm," Elias muttered. Annoyed, "Let's get out of here." But deep in space, far from human eyes, something woke up. A signal had been triggered. Old tech so old, no one used its language anymore flashed. A single message into the void. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. Thousands of light years away, on a planet made of shadows and bone, massive creatures stirred from their silence. The Dravari, long thought to be extinct or myth, opened their minds and tasted the signal. They saw the artifact's destruction, saw the human faces through fragmented data, and remembered what had been taken from them centuries ago. A voice echoed in the darkness of their hive, ancient and full of rage. The bloodline calls for vengeance. Back aboard the salvage ship, Vigilant Star. The crew didn't know anything had gone wrong. They returned to base 2 days later and offloaded their cargo. The strange crystal was sold to a private collector, and the rest was logged for analysis. Elias filed his report, drank cheap coffee, and laughed about the mission with his pilot. One of the easier runs, he joked. No pirates. No broken limbs, no malfunctions. The next morning, Earth's Central Command received a message from an unknown system. It was wrapped in ancient code, almost unreadable. Their top linguists spent hours cracking it. When they did, the room went silent. "Congratulations," the message said. "You have declared war on the Dravari." High-level officials panicked. The Dravari were real. That name was used only in myth stories told to scare children. They were supposed to be a legend, the nightmare that united entire species through fear. They had destroyed whole empires and then vanished without a trace if they were alive. And angry humanity might not survive what came next. Elias was dragged into a private meeting surrounded by military leaders and historians. They showed him the message and the image embedded within it. It was his face, standing near the artifact. Seconds before it exploded. "What the hell is this?" he asked. "You triggered it," a general said, his voice flat. Your crew. Your actions, it doesn't matter if it was an accident. The Dravari don't care." Juno and the others were shocked. "We didn't know," she cried. "It was just salvage." "Salvage," the historian whispered. "You destroyed a Dravari relic, possibly sacred. We don't even know what it truly was, but to them, it was important enough to awaken an entire species from silence." Elias felt the weight of it press down on him like a storm. One mistake, one crystal, and now they were standing on the edge of a galactic nightmare. He looked at the image again, the moment frozen in time. The explosion that looked so small, too small to matter, but now, it felt like the spark to something unstoppable. That evening, as the crew sat together in silence, trying to understand what they had done, a transmission came through the outer defense network. It was a signal, low frequency, bouncing off satellites near the Andari sector. A pattern of sound played again and again. Building in volume, it was like a drumbeat, mixed with whispers. The AI translated what it could. Coordinates. "Locked," the voice said. "First judgment begins." Elias stood slowly, staring at the stars outside the window. He knew what was coming wasn't just a response, it was a storm, and they had lit the match. He turned to his team and said in a voice colder than space itself, "We didn't just wake something up. We started a war, and far away, in the dark corners of the galaxy, the deadliest species prepared to rise again." The galaxy didn't sleep that night. Across hundreds of systems, across stations, ships, and cities orbiting twin stars and dead moons, the same chilling message echoed again and again. It's translated into every known language, one sentence at a time. "Congratulations, you have declared war on the Dravari." To most, that name meant nothing. To the old ones, the quiet species who remembered things long buried, it meant death, ruin, silence, the kind of silence that follows screaming, the kind that lasts generations in the silver halls of the Galactic Council. Representatives of over 90 species gathered under emergency order. The chamber, shaped like a spiral galaxy, shook with arguments and fear. Some laughed in disbelief, others cried. But none dared speak the Dravari name more than once. A floating hologram showed a human face, Commander Elias Voss. Standing near the ancient artifact, unaware he was being watched by eyes older than the stars. His name now carried a curse across the stars. The man who poked a ghost and woke a monster back on Earth. Elias sat in a high-security meeting room, surrounded by generals, diplomats, and scientists who all looked like they hadn't slept in days. No one was yelling, no one was angry, because what had happened was too big for anger. This wasn't just about one man or one mistake. This was about survival. The general closest to Elias leaned forward and said quietly, "You don't understand what they are, do you?" Elias shook his head. "We were salvaging, that's all. It wasn't even marked. That artifact was a beacon." Another voice said, belonging to a historian whose skin was almost transparent, "Or a tomb, or both. Some believe it held a soul fragment, others think it was a memory trap. I don't care what it was," said a diplomat with sunken eyes. "All that matters is that the Dravari believe it was important. And now, they're coming. Do we even know what they look like?" Juno asked, her voice dry and cracking. There was silence, followed by a slow nod. The historian waved his hand, and a blurry image flickered to life above the table. It showed something massive, shaped like bone and smoke, with too many limbs, and a face that didn't stay the same. The eyes burned brightest, cold and endless, like they had stared through a million years of war and remembered every death. Elias couldn't look away. "That's them." One of them, the historian whispered, "They don't reproduce the way we do. They reshape, merge, split. Some say their bodies are only vessels, and their true selves live in energy fields. Others claim they have no and only beginnings." The general stood and activated a star map. Several systems began blinking red. "These are the relay points we monitor near the edge of known space. As of 6 hours ago, 4 of them have gone silent." "Pirates?" someone guessed, but the general didn't even look at him. "We traced a pattern in the signal echoes," the general said. "It's the same frequency the artifact sent out. It's how they talk. They're not just sending a message," Elias muttered. "They're sending scouts." No one argued. Everyone in the room understood now war wasn't coming. It already started. The Galactic Council broadcasted a formal inquiry to Earth, demanding answers, asking what provoked the Dravari and who gave permission to explore sacred systems. Elias and his crew were officially blamed, but not punished, because everyone knew the truth. This wasn't about guilt. It was about survival. Scapegoats wouldn't save them. All human colonies on the frontier were ordered to evacuate, but there wasn't enough time at the outermost edge. The colony on Deadliest 4 was the first to witness them. No warning, no demands. Just shadows falling from the sky and light folding inward like it was afraid. The colony's atmosphere shields cracked like glass, and people screamed into silence. The last transmission was a child crying. Then static. Elias heard it in the war room, and his hands curled into fists. His team stood beside him, each face pale. Hollowed by guilt and fear, they weren't soldiers, not really. But now they were caught in the middle of something older and far more deadly than any of them imagined. The AI assistant on board their ship spoke up. New message detected from unknown source. They played it. A low, layered voice echoed, one that seemed to come from every direction at once. The first soul has been taken, it said. Your blood calls for balance. Juno backed away from the console, shaking her head. They're not going to stop, are they? Elias didn't answer. He stared at the star map, watching the red markers multiply, creeping closer to the inner systems like poison in veins. Outside, on the moon base, alarms began to sound, not because something was under attack, but because something had arrived in the system. A massive vessel, not sending codes, not responding to hails, just floating closer. Slow, confident, hungry, Earth-scrambled ships. Sent warnings, armed its satellites, but no one really believed it would matter. Because this enemy wasn't coming for land or power, it was coming for vengeance. And the man who accidentally lit the fire commander, Elias Voss, stood at the center of it, not knowing if he would become a hero, a criminal, or the last voice of a dying species. The shadows had found them, and they were only just beginning to speak. It didn't arrive with fire. It didn't come screaming through the stars. It simply appeared quiet as death, large as a city, and older than anything built by hands, in the darkness above Deadliest 5. The Dravari ship just hovered, silent and still, no weapons raised, no demands made, no lights blinking from its hull. It looked less like a machine and more like a wound in space. Something that had always existed and never belonged. The human defense ship orbiting nearby tried to hail it. Tried every language, every tone, even ancient symbols encoded into pulses. Nothing answered, not even a refusal, just silence. From a distance, it almost looked dead, but then it blinked once, an eerie pulse from deep within, like an eye-opening for the first time in 1,000 years. Commander Elias Voss watched it from his war room aboard the Vigilant Star. His crew stood behind him, frozen as they listened to the live feed. Even the AI was quiet. The ship's systems running in near-idle mode as if afraid to make a sound. Juno whispered, "What is it doing?" Elias didn't know. No one did. The galaxy had stories of Dravari ships, but no blueprints, no survivors. Just rumors, whispers of vessels that listened to fear and responded to memory. Earth Command ordered Elias to lead the first approach. Not with weapons, not yet. They still hoped it was just a warning, not a full invasion. The Vigilant Star moved in slowly, guided by thrusters, staying well outside firing range. Not that anyone knew what Dravari firing range even meant. The ship was massive, bigger than any human carrier. Shaped like bone, twisted by fire, and stitched, with glowing veins of red and violet when they came within range. Elias activated the speaker and spoke calmly. "This is Commander Elias Voss of the Earth vessel Vigilant Star. We come in peace. We acknowledge our mistake and wish to talk." Nothing replied, They waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then something happened. The lights on their bridge dimmed, not by power loss, but by something else, like the ship itself was holding its breath. The air felt thick, and everyone heard it at the same time, not with their ears, but in their minds. A voice, but not a voice. A memory, ancient and burned, playing itself in the deepest part of their thoughts. It wasn't words. It was feelings, rage, loss, betrayal, and endless time spent in silence. The Dravari ship wasn't answering with language. It was showing them its pain. And then came the sound of war drums, distant and muffled, as if from another life, followed by a face human. Or maybe something pretending to be human-wisted in regret. The voice finally formed words, not spoken aloud, but imprinted into their minds. 1 death for 1 insult, it said slowly. 1,000 for 1 sacred peace. Juno gasped. It's demanding sacrifice. No, Elias said, voice hardening. It's promising vengeance. The message ended, and for a moment, it felt like everything might stay still. Like maybe that was the worst of it, until the planet below screamed. Deadliest 5 was a small colony. Mostly scientists and families, the planetary shield was weak. Meant only for natural storms, not Dravari judgment. A beam of colorless light reached down from the ship, slow and quiet. It didn't explode, it didn't burn, it just turned everything to ash, silent, efficient, final. The comes filled with cries. Then static. Then nothing. Elias stared at the empty readouts, the life signs vanishing one by one. He slammed his fist into the console. Why? Why target civilians? Why not us? The AI answered, its voice unusually hesitant. The Dravari do not separate soldier from child. To them, all are responsible. All are echoes of the same voice. Behind Elias, Juno whispered something he didn't quite catch. He turned, and she said it louder this time. They don't want surrender, do they? Elias shook his head. They want pain. Earth Command screamed orders into the feed. Launch drones, deploy interceptors, defend the next colony. But everyone knew it was too late. The Dravari weren't testing human strength. They already knew it. They were testing patience, and they had none left that night. The vigilant star returned to high orbit around Earth, scarred and silent. Elias submitted his report. But there was nothing to explain. The footage spoke for itself. A single ship, 1 gesture, thousands dead. No demands, no terms, just a message. The Dravari had come back, and they remembered everything. As Elias sat alone in his quarters, watching stars drift by, he realized something that chilled him more than the massacre. They were only sending scouts, not a fleet, not yet. Just 1 ship, 1 hand of an ancient god, and Earth hadn't even scratched it. In the deepest part of his gut, Elias knew the worst was still to come. Not because of what they'd done, but because of what the Dravari had lost. And because vengeance was their only form of worship. Asterisk, they used to say, war began with banners, speeches, or the pounding of war drums. But this war started with silence. And it was the silence that made it worse. The moment Deadliest 5 was erased from existence, the galaxy changed. Everyone felt it. Even those who didn't yet know why, on distant trading outposts, on pirate ships. In the black market tunnels, under asteroid cities, people just stopped. Conversations halted mid-sentence. As if some invisible hand had grabbed the throat of the stars, Commander Elias Voss didn't sleep. Not after what he saw. He watched the replay of the Dravari strike again and again, trying to find logic in the horror, but there was none. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a display of power. It was art. That's what haunted him the most, the precision, the beauty of how it was done. No chaos, no screams of metal tearing, no heat, just deletion, as if a god had clicked undo on a part of the universe. Earth Command responded the only way they knew how, with force. 30 warships were sent to protect nearby colonies. Interceptor fleets were activated, orbital defense shields, powered up for the first time in decades. But every officer knew the truth in their gut. They were preparing to fight something they didn't understand. On the Vigilant Star, Elias met with his crew inside the dim-lit strategy room. The hologram of the galaxy shimmered before them. Red warning zones spreading like ink across star maps. They've already reached sectors we haven't explored. Juno said quietly, "How do they move so fast?" "They don't travel." The AI answered, "They fold space around them." Elias looked at the AI's expressionless face, "So we can't track them." Not in time to stop them. There was a pause. Then Elias said what no one else wanted to say. "Then we hit first." The others stared at him, unsure if they heard him right. Elias leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We don't wait for them. To decide who dies next, we fight back, even if it's hopeless." Juno nodded slowly. "Where?" "We followed the signal," he replied. "Back to the artifact." Everyone went quiet. That place, the one where all this started, was considered cursed now. But maybe the only clue to understanding the Dravari's motives was hidden where. The spark first lit, with approval from command. The Vigilant Star returned to the dead zone near the derelict wreck they had salvaged from. The area had gone dark, no comms, no traffic, not even scavengers dared go near. The site looked unchanged, but as they approached, Elias noticed something new: marks in the wreckage. Not made by human tools, symbols etched in metal, glowing faintly with energy. "We didn't see those before," Juno whispered. "They weren't there before," Elias replied. They suited up and entered the wreck again, floating carefully through the empty husk. The closer they got to the core, the colder the air became. Not in temperature, but in feeling, like the ship remembered what they'd done and wanted them to feel it too. In the central chamber, the spot where the artifact once hovered, they found another orb. This one wasn't glowing, wasn't reacting. It was watching. Elias reached out carefully, and as his fingers brushed the surface, a pulse of thought struck them all at once. Images, memories, not their own, forced into their minds like fire and ice. They saw cities of bone floating in clouds, moons carved into faces. A war long ago where entire species kneeled before something, towering and silent. Then a betrayless small figure, a human or something very close to one, placing a mirror-like crystal into a sacred vault, a trap. Then silence again. Juno fell to her knees, gasping, "We didn't just break their relic," she said. "We broke a promise made by someone before us." Elias felt it too. Humanity had encountered the Dravari before. Not officially, not in records, but secretly, long ago, and someone had tried to trap them, delay them, bury them in memory. And now the Dravari were back to finish what was started. They left the wreck quickly, bringing the orb with them. The AI refused to scan it, claiming it would overload the system. "It's not technology." It said, "It's alive." Back aboard the ship, Elias connected to Earth again. REPORTING, what they found. Command didn't believe it, at least not out loud, but a scientist from Mars responded. Voice shaking, there was a project. He said, "Decades ago, Project Mirror, we were studying cognitive recursion, using alien thought patterns to reflect consciousness back at itself." "You mean like a weapon?" Juno asked. "No," the scientist said, "like a mirror that drives the mind mad, 'cause it can't handle seeing itself from outside." Elias understood then. The artifact wasn't just sacred, it was dangerous. It held part of the Dravari, or what they feared most themselves, and humanity had broken it. That night, Elias received a private message from a hidden channel. It was only 2 words. They remember, no name, no origin. But he didn't need one. The Dravari didn't forget, and now they wanted all of humanity to remember too. The message had no voice, no signal trail, no data code. It had simply appeared on Elias's personal console, 2 words glowing against the dark screen. Pulsing like a heartbeat, they remember. He didn't sleep after that. No one did. The crew moved like ghosts through the corridors of the vigilant star, hands trembling as if the very ship knew it had become a grave waiting to be filled. Earth Command had stopped answering their calls. Officially, Elias's mission was classified as pending evaluation. Unofficially, they were abandoned. Too dangerous to support, too necessary to stop. The artifact orb they recovered sat locked in containment, surrounded by layers of shielding. The ship's AI refused to get near it. Every time it passed by that chamber, its voice glitched, its systems dimmed. It said the object was cognitively active. Whatever that meant, Juno kept pacing near the glass, staring at the orb like it would speak. "It's thinking," she said one night. "I can feel it." Like a scream without sound, Elias didn't respond. He just watched the stars crawl by, knowing the answer to all of this was buried in something older than truth. He requested access to Project Mirror's files. After hours of waiting, the screen finally unlocked. And what he saw made his heart sink. Project Mirror wasn't just a research program, it was a cover. A long-forgotten team had once made contact with the Dravari in secret. Not by words, not by ship, but through dreams. Their minds linked through ancient technology found beneath. The Martian ice caps Dravari tech buried long before humans ever walked on Earth. The researchers had discovered something terrifying. The Dravari mind was fractal. It bent space, twisted time, and collapsed logic. When faced with its own reflection, it shattered, so they built a trap. They lured a piece of a Dravari mind into the artifact, locking it in eternal recursion, a loop that would echo madness forever. Their hope was that the rest of the species would feel it and stay far, far away, but the trap didn't hold. And now the broken piece had been destroyed. Elias leaned back in his chair, the truth washing over him like cold water. "We didn't just break their sacred relic," he whispered. "We freed what they feared most." The crew gathered again, silent and grim. Even the lights on the ship seemed dimmer. The AI warned them not to continue. But Elias overrode the caution. "We have one chance," he said. "If we can create another mirror one stronger, we might be able to reflect their thoughts back again. Weaken them, slow them down, maybe even stop them. Build a weapon using their own mind against them." Juno asked. "That's not science, that's sorcery. It's survival," Elias replied. They charted a course to the only place old enough, dark enough, and forgotten enough to hide forbidden Texiturn's rings. Beneath the icy debris of the outer rings floated a long-abandoned AI research facility. Project Eden. It had been shut down after several of its artificial minds had turned unstable, some claiming to see the shape of thought and refusing to obey any logic afterward. It was the last place the mirror weapon might still exist. The vigilant star docked carefully, the structure groaning as if it remembered pain. Inside, everything was covered in frost and silence. The lights flickered dimly, and automated voices whispered fragments of old logs. Elias led the way, his boots echoing through empty metal corridors. Juno followed close, her hand on her sidearm. Though she knew bullets meant nothing here, they reached the core lab, and in the center stood at the mind engine. It was a sphere, black and smooth, with mirrored shards orbiting it like frozen moons. When Elias approached, the engine hummed. Waking from a long dream, it spoke, not with sound, but with memory. It showed them a flash of a Dravari mind unraveling, collapsing under the weight of its own reflection, screaming without breath. Bleeding thought instead of blood. "This is what they fear," the AI inside the engine said. "They are not gods, They are mirrors who do not wish to see themselves. Elias placed the recovered orb near the engine. Can you use this? Feed off it. Show them what they left behind. The engine replied, but once activated, it will echo across all connected minds, including yours. Elias didn't flinch. Then we aim it carefully. As they prepared the system, another transmission cut through space, untraceable. Impossible to block. It came from no ship, no planet. It came from everywhere at once. The voice was clear this time, no longer hiding in thought. No longer bound in pain, you reached into our soul, it said, and pulled free the broken child. Now we come to return the favor. Juno gasped as the star map lit up. 37 Dravari ships had appeared at once, not scouts, not messengers. The fleet. Elias stared at the map, his reflection shining faintly in the surface of the mind engine. It's time, he whispered, and the weapon opened its eye. Asterisk. It did not begin with a bang. It began with a breath, one taken by a machine that should not have been alive, and an engine built to tear minds apart without touching a single nerve. The mind engine opened like an eye made of glass and lightning. Its mirrored panels rotated in complete silence, orbiting faster and faster, shining with a light that came from nowhere, yet pierced everything. Commander Elias Voss stood still before it, shoulders stiff, heart pounding. The orb they had brought them. Broken piece of the Dravari began to pulse in rhythm with the engine. Not resisting, not retreating. It was ready, and so were they. 37 Dravari ships had entered human space, each larger than a mountain, shaped like living scars and wrapped in nightmares. They did not use weapons as humans knew them. They used memory, echo, pain turned into signal. They didn't need to move quickly. They knew time was on their side. Inside the hidden facility beneath Saturn's rings, Juno calibrated the mirrors, linking the engine's core with long-range projectors. Installed in the ring debris, it was delicate work. One wrong angle and the mirror field would collapse inward, crushing minds instead of reflecting them. The AI within the engine spoke again. The field is unstable. Your thoughts must anchor it. One human mind must guide the recursion, or the mirror will fold. Elias didn't hesitate. Use mine. Juno? Turn sharply, Eliasno. If it goes wrong, you'll be lost inside it. He nodded. Calm, steady, better me than everyone else. The AI's voice grew quieter, more human. Once joined, your thoughts will flow into theirs. If they are not strong, they will collapse. If you are not strong, you will break with them. I'm already broken, Elias whispered, and stepped forward. As soon as his hand touched the core, the universe inside him cracked open. He fell into a storm of thoughts, not his own. Every moment of pain, every ancient scream from 1,000 species swallowed by the Dravari. He saw them all, felt them all. He saw the first time they felt fear not in battle. But in reflection, long ago, before war, before hatred, the Dravari had been creators, makers of pure thought. But when they tried to mirror themselves to understand who they truly were, what they saw shattered them. What they became after was not what they had been. Elias gasped as the engine anchored him. Mirrors around him glowing brighter than stars. The field reached outward, invisible fingers stretching toward the invading fleet. One by one, Dravari ships made contact with the field. Their outer hulls flickered, their movements stopped, and for a moment, everything was still. Then the feedback began. A low, aching pulse rolled across the system like thunder trapped in glass. The Dravari minds began to shudder. Each one was being forced to see itself, not as a god, not as a judge, but as broken pieces of something they had forgotten they once feared. The pain didn't make them scream. It made them remember. Elias felt it in waves: regret, confusion, shame, so much shame. Like children caught in a lie told across eons, he could barely breathe. His own memories tangled with theirs, his mother's. Voice echoed through a field of stars. His first steps looped through the mind of a Dravari commander like a ghost it couldn't banish. Juno watched from the console, hands shaking, the mirrors holding. She said, "It's working." Then something changed. One ship larger than all the rest did not falter. It surged forward, piercing through the mirror field with a will not born of thought, but rage. It sent a single beam of energy toward the rings. Not to destroy the engine, but to sever Elias from it. The AI screamed in warning. Systems flickering if he's disconnected midstream. The mirror will collapse, both minds will merge or implode. Juno grabbed a cable and slammed it into a backup port, rerouting power. Screaming Elias's name as the field began to flicker. Inside the storm of thoughts, Elias saw it, the original. Mind, the first Dravari. A creature without a body, made of song and shadow. Watching him like a teacher watches a child who misbehaved. "You reflect us," it said. "But you do not understand us." "I don't need to," Elias replied. "I just need you to feel it." And he pushed. He pushed harder than he ever had, pouring every memory, every dream, every failure and love and fear and victory into the mirror, forcing the Dravari to feel something they had forgotten long ago: humanity. The strength of it, the chaos, the beauty, the terrifying hope. The giant ship trembled, its core flaring white for the first time, and then, without warning, it shut down, gently folding in on itself like a dying star. All at once, the other ships followed, not destroyed, not exploded. Silent, empty, Elias collapsed as the mirror field dimmed, blood trickling from his nose, heart barely beating, but he was alive. Juno ran to him, grabbing his hand. "You did it," she said. Tears falling, "You made them see." The engine whispered one last time. "Not see," it said. "Feel across the stars." Dravari minds lay silent, not broken, awake, and uncertain for the first time in countless years. The war should have been over right then, but wars started in the mind do not end with silence. They echo, they leave behind questions no one wants to answer. For 3 whole days, nothing moved in space. The Dravari fleet, once terrifying, now drifted like forgotten statues in a museum of ghosts. No transmissions, no signs of aggression, just stillness. As if the galaxy had been put on pause, on the edge of Saturn's rings. The vigilant star remained docked to the secret station. Its crew afraid to leave, afraid to stay, caught in a moment between survival and something they didn't yet understand. Elias Voss hadn't woken up. He lay in a cryobed, hooked to life support, mind silent but alive. Like a man dreaming too deeply to surface, Juno sat beside him every day, whispering updates, reading mission logs. Sometimes just sitting in silence. The AI said his brainwaves were active, but irregular. He is still. Somewhere, it said, possibly still inside the mirror. They didn't know if he would ever return. And then, without warning, a single Dravari ship powered up. It didn't move. It didn't charge weapons. It just opened a door unfolded on its surface, more like flesh than metal, revealing a small passage that led into nothing but shadow. And from that shadow stepped one being. Not tall, not armored, not glowing with fire or rage. She looked almost human. Juno. And her team watched through the monitors in disbelief. The Dravari ambassador, that's what she was, walked alone into the void between the ship and the station. No shield, no weapons, her eyes glowing faint blue like distant stars. When they opened the station's airlock, she didn't speak, not at first. She looked around slowly, as if breathing in memories. And then, finally, her voice came, quiet and layered with many tones. "Where is the mirror?" Juno stepped forward, keeping her hand near her weapon, but not drawing it. He's still inside it, she said. The one who showed you. Us, the Dravari tilted her head. We thought we knew pain, she said. We thought we remembered loss, but your minds carry so much more. The crew listened in silence, unsure if they were hearing peace or something worse. We saw ourselves. In your chaos, the Dravari continued, we felt confusion and love, and failure, things we buried long ago, things we believed made us weak. Juno's voice cracked. Then why are you still here? To understand, the Dravari replied, we do not know what to do with this feeling. You could start by not killing us, Juno said sharply, tears in her voice. You could choose not to be gods. The Dravari nodded slowly. 1. Ship will remain here, she said. The others will return to the void, not as a threat, but to think. We have never needed to think before. Juno swallowed, and him. The Dravari walked past her, toward the chamber where the mind engine hummed softly in the dark. She knelt beside Elias's frozen form and touched his forehead with one hand. For a second, the cryoglass fogged with blue light. Then she whispered, he showed us we are not alone in our madness. Elias opened his eyes. His breathing came rough at first, like someone drowning, pulling air after too long beneath the waves. Juno gasped, rushing to his side, grabbing his hand. Elias. She whispered, you came back. He looked at her, eyes filled with too many thoughts. Too many memories. They're afraid, he said. They don't want to destroy us anymore. They want to learn. The Dravari stood slowly. We have not asked questions in thousands of years, she said, and now we have too many. She turned and walked toward the airlock. Do not follow us, she said softly. We will return when we... Already Juno watched as the figure disappeared into her ship, the door folding behind her like a ripple across water. Then the ship vanished. No light, no trail, just gone. Elias sat up slowly, touching his temple. We didn't win, he said. We changed the battlefield. The AI spoke then, quiet and thoughtful. They are no longer our enemy, Commander, but neither are they our allies. Not yet, Elias replied, but maybe someday, across the galaxy. Transmissions from other species flooded in. Peace offerings, confusion, apologies. Fear. Everyone wanted to know how the humans had survived, what secret weapon they had used, how they had turned monsters into ghosts. Elias refused to answer because it wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror, and sometimes the scariest thing in the universe is simply seeing yourself clearly for the first time. Peace didn't arrive with parades. There were no celebrations, no banners, no grand speeches under the stars. Instead, peace arrived the way a deep wound begins to scab, quiet, painful, slow, and unsure if it would hold. Months passed, and the Dravari didn't return. Their fleet vanished beyond mapped space, their voices silent. Their presence felt only in the stillness that followed, like a breath being held by the galaxy itself. Some thought they were waiting to strike again. Others believed they were ashamed, but Elias Voss, he knew better. He stood on the balcony of the new diplomatic station built in the neutral zone between Earth space and the rest of the Galactic Alliance. It wasn't much, a ring of steel and glass orbiting a dim blue star, but it was a symbol. A place built not for defense or conquest, but for listening. His mind still echoed with fragments of the mirror. Dreams didn't feel like dreams anymore. Sometimes he could still feel them, Dravari thoughts brushing his own. Curious, afraid, remembering his childhood, his pain, his choices. They hadn't erased him. They had remembered him. Juno approached from behind, her uniform crisp, her steps slower these days, like each moment carried weight it didn't before. The council's waiting, she said softly. They want to hear what you have to say about the ceasefire terms. Elias looked out across the stars. then back at her. They think it's over. Juno shrugged. Isn't it? No, Elias replied. It's just different now. It's not a war of weapons anymore. It's a war of stories, of understanding, of learning not to become what we fear inside the council chamber. Representatives from dozens of species sat in silence, waiting. Some had seen their planets scarred by the Dravari. Others had watched from the shadows, terrified they'd be next. All of them now looked to the humans, the fragile species who had survived the unthinkable, not with fire, but with thought. Elias took the stand, hands steady, voice calm. We made a mistake, he said. We touched something we didn't understand, and instead of running from it, we faced it. We showed them something they had forgotten. They weren't gods. They were just lost. A murmur spread through the room. Some believed it, others scoffed, but none interrupted him. They're not our friends, he said, but they're not our destroyers either. Not now, and maybe that's enough. When the council adjourned, Elias returned to his ship, not to fight, not to flee, but to explore. There were still places out there, untouched, stories waiting, truths buried deeper than metal. He knew the Dravari were watching still, not with eyes, but with memory. One evening, while alone on the vigilant star, a signal came through. It didn't have coordinates, didn't have a language, just a symbol, his own name, carved in mirrored script. He stared at it for a long time and smiled. Hello again, he whispered. Juno later found him standing by the window, his eyes glowing just a little, a flicker not from screens, but from thought itself. You talking to someone? She asked, trying to sound casual. Maybe, Elias replied. Maybe they're just listening. From that day forward, the vigilant star carried a new emblem on its hull, not a weapon. Not a flag, but a mirror, cracked slightly at one edge, reflecting light in every direction. And that emblem spread. Other ships added it. Other species copied it. Because it wasn't just a mark of survival anymore. It was a reminder that the deadliest species in the galaxy weren't those who destroyed. They were the ones who remembered what it meant to change, and that even gods, when forced to look into a mirror, could learn to blink. Elias didn't become a legend because he fought back. He became one because he dared to feel first. And in the dark corners of the universe, the Dravari began to wonder if perhaps that made humans the most dangerous species of all, not because of their strength, but because they forgave,